Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. This is day 3 of Discover Fest. We have David Young, the drone expert extraordinaire. We are so excited for this workshop today. I've had the chance to do a workshop with David in the past. I learned a ton. I have follow-up questions, so I'm very glad you're back. I'm very glad you're part of Discover Fest.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me to participate.
Our pleasure. And we're going to get started in about 2 to 3 minutes. We want to give folks who are clicking late, maybe they just got the reminder, a chance to join. What would be wonderful is if you are joining us today, just let us know in the chat you could hear us. I do see folks saying hi, which is a good sign, but let us know where you're joining from. Let us know you can hear us. If we have any audio or tech things we need to fix, this is the time we want to do it. So if you could say hi in the chat, let us know where you're writing in from and just say, hey, I hear you, or hey, I don't hear you. One of the two. Let me take a look here. I hear you both from Ireland. Well, right. Stuart, I see Stuart saying that. Thank you for letting me know. I don't feel crazy.
Staying up late over there.
It is. Exactly.
Yeah.
For folks who are joining later, let's say you're watching this 10 minutes from now because you joined us midway through this thing, there will be a replay available. We will send out a link to this replay after this workshop's over. That replay will be available until November 30th, as well as the bundle David's going to mention today. But if you do miss it, if you join us late, no problem. There will be a replay available. And David, just so you know, I want you to hear where folks are joining from today, because we have a whole bunch.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, we have folks from Georgia, we have Ontario, Houston, Texas, Connecticut, Albuquerque, Washington, Tulsa, Wisconsin, California, San Diego, Michigan, North Dakota. We see you there. We got Big D with the good audio, which is great. Mick in New Zealand, Gary from New York. We got Lionel in Michigan and Jim from Magnolia, Texas. People are still writing in, but we have folks crazy, right? Again, the time zone thing. So thank you everyone who's joining us late in their day, or whether it's just getting started.
Is it like 4 a.m. in New Zealand?
Hey, if you're going to learn about drones, you got to wake up.
I'm impressed.
Exactly. Well, I think we can get started here without further ado. David, not everyone here knows you today, so I'd love if you could start with give some folks some background on yourself. I'm sure there's folks here, they might have joined into other Discover workshops, and this is their first time hearing your wonderful content. So, David, without further ado, tell us about yourself.
Yeah. Well, first off, let me just say, thanks to Aaron for having me on. The workshop that we're going to talk through today, just as a quick kind of brief, is going to be geared towards people probably who are more interested in drones. If you already have a drone business and you're successful and all that stuff, you might get some stuff from today, but this is for people who are kind of at the interest level. You've thought about drones, maybe you've flown drones a little bit, you think it's cool. So that's what we're going to be kind of geared towards and talking about. But a little bit about myself. Again, David Young. I founded a company called Drone Launch Academy. Not Drone Academy, Drone Launch Academy. Some people get it confused. Back in 2015, 2016. And essentially, we create online courses to help people use their drones for commercial purposes. So we partner with, I'm not the one who teaches all the courses. I'm in some of the courses, but we have gone out and found a bunch of experts in different fields, whether that's, aviation weather people, drone attorneys, things like that for some prep course stuff we have. We found and worked with 6-figure drone business owners for business courses, Hollywood editors for kind of video production stuff. So we go out and we find people who are experts at what they do. We partner with them and we make courses together to help you or people who are interested in drones learn how to fly drones, how to get good at all the aspects that you need to be good at in order to use your drone for business or set up your own drone business. So we've been doing that for the last 4 years. I think we have over 18,000 students now that have gone through some of our courses. We've used Teachable the whole time. We started on Teachable back in 2015, 2016. It's been great. So we all have all of our courses there. It's been a fun ride. So I've been learning. Before this, I was an FBI forensic accountant. So kind of a hard shift to doing online business and course creation. And I got some funny stories I could share along the way with how that went. It did not go well at first because I didn't know how to do any marketing. So, but now we're here and we've got, probably 6 or 7 courses in our kind of like Drone Launch Academy library now. But we just love teaching people about drones, helping people get started and kind of launch, drone launch their business or their hobby. So yeah, that's kind of the background on us.
Was stuck on mute.
I was like,
Absolutely
am I supposed
incredible.
to say something
I
now?
was like,
or-
click, click. Yeah, no, I was like, click, 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 trying to get off mute. That's incredible. And you know, one day I do want to hear the background story a bit more, coming back from the FBI to where you are now.
Sure.
And you know, with today's workshop, I know you said it's more towards those curious about drones. Walk us a bit through what you're going to go through. What's the format for today? I know folks are going to have questions. I've already said, please put in the chat as you have questions, because there is time for Q&A today. You know, David's here. We're going to try to get to as many questions as we could.
Yeah. So I'm here to talk about 5 things. I have some notes here so I don't forget or lose my place, but I'm mostly going to be talking to you guys. But 5 things are the goal of the workshop is how to become an awesome drone pilot that makes money. So I'm gearing this towards you starting from the beginning and become good enough to, if you want to, start making some money with your drone or get some clients, things like that. People use drones for other things too, right? If they have an employer and they're using drones kind of in their line of work. A lot of people do that. So we end up seeing a lot of people like police officers or firefighters or engineers that use drones in their business anyways, like for their employer. And then they're like, oh, hey, actually, I can also do this on the side and make some money too. So we get a lot of that. So number 1, we're going to talk about how to actually become an FAA certified drone pilot. That's a real thing. People are like, what? A drone pilot, a certified drone pilot. But that's come about in the last few years. So we're going to talk about that, how to do it, some tips, what all the steps you need to take. Number 2, we're going to talk about which drones are the best. So it's a question we get all the time. What drone should I buy? What drone should I buy? Is this one good? Is this one good? What if I'm just starting out? What if this is my budget?
Especially with Black Friday coming up. I see folks asking, Black Friday's coming up. What do I buy? Is it time to upgrade?
So we'll give you the range. I got some drones here I'll show you, but I'll give you the range. Like, hey, if you're starting out and your budget's this, I would go here, kind of give you some options for that. So that's a common question we get. And then I'll talk about number 3. We're going to talk about number 3 is 2 essential skills for making money with your drone. So we also have a podcast called Drone to 1K. All we do is interview successful drone business owners. So we've talked to tons of them, right? And we have 18,000 students. So we have a pretty good idea of what separates successful drone pilots and unsuccessful drone pilots and what kind of skills are required for kind of making it, if you will. So there's kind of 2 main things that 2 big categories we've boiled it down to. So we'll share those with you so you kind of get an idea of what you need to be thinking about. Number 4, we're going to talk about the best industries to get into. So all the people say, what industries should I fly in? Which one's good? What are the pros and cons? What to think through? So we're going to go through that. Again, talk to thousands of drone pilots, so we have a good sense of which industries are good, ones are bad. We also have a drone company ourselves that we run where we go out and we fly jobs and do all this stuff. So we're kind of hands-on in there doing it ourselves too. And then number 5 is we're going to walk through a plan to, if you're like, cool, I want to try this and get started. I'm going to say like, listen, if I were in your shoes or what I did when I was in your shoes, here are the exact steps I would take over the next, in the near future to get started on that journey. So it's always nice to have some concrete steps, because sometimes, you know, you go to these workshops or you come to a training and they talk about all this cool stuff, but it's a bit nebulous and like it gets you excited, but you're like, all right, what am I supposed to actually like do now? You know, so I want to give you at least some concrete action plans you can write down to actually implement and do. So those are the 5 things. So we'll talk about those. I believe there's going to be some time for Q&A. We also, with our company, we have some Black Friday deals that we're doing in conjunction with Teachable. So I can mention those and kind of what's included if you're interested in some of that stuff. And then I'll just be around to answer any questions that you guys have.
Sounds wonderful. I think you said for the first one, you're starting with the licensing process, right? Like becoming a drone pilot it's a real thing. There's a real, I forget the exact licensing, the P107, I think you mentioned, but
yeah,
exactly. So I think let's start there. And as folks put in questions, I'm excited to understand this process.
Sure. So back when I was getting into drones, kind of the mid 20 teens, if you will, it was a very difficult process to technically become, to legally fly drones for money or for any business purpose. The old rules, in my opinion, were a little bit ridiculous, and I think everybody knew that, but it was what it was. So the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, they're the ones who are responsible for anything in the air in the United States, right? They control it. They consider a drone to be an aircraft. So this is a drone, right? They classify this as an aircraft, okay? This would be treated the same as a Cessna or a 737, okay? That sounds ridiculous.
Feels crazy.
That's kind of how it was. Even this guy, all right, would be treated that way. So, because think about it, the drones typically were used for like military purposes. So you have these big like Reaper drones, big fixed wing, they almost were aircraft, but then they started making them more efficient, smaller and smaller, and basically they were, some people view them as toys, but the FAA said, listen, these things can go thousands of feet in the air. They can fly over the place. We're calling these aircraft. So the rules back in before 2016 were that you had to have a legit like pilot's license to fly a drone. And then not only did you have to have a pilot's license, you had to be exempt from certain regulations. So in the specific codes, so 14 CFR part 160, or part 64, I don't remember the exact part, but in the Code of Federal Regulations, it says to carry out commercial aircraft activity, here are all the requirements. So they said, listen, what we'll do is if you have your pilot's license, you can write us basically this huge document called a Section 333 exemption, and you write it up and say why you should be exempt from all the rules that technically make commercial drone operations not legal according to the regulations. So you had to kind of from scratch just create this document out of thin air that was telling the FAA why you should be able to fly. And then you had to submit it to them, and then you had to wait 90 days for them to review it. And then either they got back to you and said, yes, this sounds good, you can operate for 2 years, or they said, no, you need to make changes, fix this, submit it again, and you have to wait another 3 months for us to tell you if there's anything else wrong with it. I mean, it's like a horrible process. So I was getting in the game about that point, and I started that process, navigated it, and then realized, I bet a lot of other people are having the same issue. So I ended up just kind of consulting and helping other people do that. And then I just saw how much demand there was for people wanting to use drones for commercial use, right? So I was like, wow, there's a lot of people doing this, or a lot of people interested in this. So I did that for a while on the side. I was still working for the FBI, but kind of was on the side helping people do this. And in August of 2016, they came out with a law. So 14 CFR Part 107. You don't really care about that, but I only say that because now everybody refers to it as the Part 107 rules, right? But they just say that that's just the part of the regulations that it's found in. But that says, listen, you don't have to have a pilot's license anymore. We realized that was kind of overkill for flying these tiny little drones. You don't have to have a pilot's license. You just have to have, it's called a remote pilot certificate. That's the name of it. Remote pilot certificate. That's the official name. And in order to get this remote pilot certificate, you have to pass a 60-question test that the FAA administers, or it's their test, but they administer it through testing centers. So you have to pass this test. You have to go to a testing center, typically like a flight school. You have to register. You have to get on. It's in like it's like you're taking the SATs or something. Like it's a closed environment, or it's on the computer. So you sit down. They're like they take your phone. They take all this stuff. It's kind of stressful, but it's not a crazy hard test, right? You do have to study for it, but we have people that'll typically can study for a week or two, go through a course. Some people self-study and they pass the test, right? So it's definitely passable. If you don't do any studying, you probably won't pass. But if you give it a little effort, most people pass if they study. So 60 questions, multiple choice. There's like 3 answer choices. It covers things like a lot of what are called sectional charts, which are these aviation maps. This I think is kind of stupid, but it's the rules. So you have to know how to read these like aviation maps with all these circles on it. It's the same thing that pilots need to know how to read, so they know what airspace they're in, what the tower frequencies are, all this stuff. They want you to know how to do that so that if you do have to operate in busy airspace, you know how to read where you are, how to communicate, things like that. So, there's a lot of apps out there now that automatically tell you what airspace you're in and make it a lot easier. So I don't know anyone that really utilizes the actual charts that they make you learn how to read, but at least it's like, it's like in school when they make you write cursive. It's like, are you gonna write cursive in your life? Probably not, but like, it's probably good to know, So it's like, you have to know that. So that's a big thing. Airspace, what airspace you're in, big airports, small airports, when you need to ask for permission, when you don't need to ask for permission. So that's a big one. A lot of regulation, what you can and can't do with your drones. Can you carry stuff on your drone? Can you fly this distance? How fast can you go? What times a day can you fly? All that. And then, so those are big. Those are the probably 2 biggest categories. And there's a whole host of other things on there. I don't want to scare you too much. It's 60 questions. It's not like the end of the world, but it's things like weight and balance, maintenance, some weather, some aviation weather, just light stuff, how to read some charts, maintenance. I think I might have said that. So there's just kind of like other areas. Aeromedical factors is what they call them. So basically, you can't drink X amount of hours before you operate a drone, things like that.
And is the pricing for that test, the 107 exam, is that the same state by state? Just because I'm seeing folks already ask questions in the chat around pricing, and folks who are taking it are saying different prices, perhaps. So
it used to be $150, I think, everywhere, and I think it recently went up to $160, and that's charged by the testing center. So right now it's PSI. So if you go to or CATS, I think they merged. But if you go to PSI Part 107, you can go to the PSI website, and you can register to take you can tell you where the testing centers are, all that good stuff. So it's, I think right now it's 160, right, to take that test. And just a little plug, I know we're gonna get there, but I just got to plug real quick. We have a prep course for the Part 107 test. And for our prep course, we say that if you finish and complete our prep course for it and you pass our internal exam, right? If you go to take your test and you don't pass the test, we'll give you the money back that you paid for our course, plus we will refund you the exam fees that you paid to take it. So we lose $160 if you fail after taking our course. So if you want like a risk-free way, that's an option. Or you can just go study on your own. All right, so that's the Part 107. Once you take and pass that, then the process is you find out right away if you passed or failed. If you passed, within 2 days, you should be given a kind of a temporary airman certificates or a temporary license, and you can go onto a website called IACRA, IACRA, I believe. It's an FAA website. It's like their database where you can see your application status, and you can use your temporary certificate. I think they do run a TSA background check on you to make sure you're not like a terrorist and they're going to use your drone to like bomb something. Or I think if you have like a violent felony, it has to be like longer than 10 years ago. There's some rules. If you go to the TSA website, you can find those, but they run like a cursory TSA check on you and then give you your license. So you get your paper license that you can use. So now you're an official drone pilot, right? You're a remote pilot. So you can be a remote pilot in command, right? So you're a remote pilot certificate holder. Then they mail you your little card, your little, like, it looks like a little driver's license. They mail you your airman card. It usually takes several weeks to get to you, but you'll get that in the mail. So now you're a certified drone pilot, right? So that's the test portion. Should we take questions or questions and answers on that before we move on? I feel like maybe it'd be good to address some stuff if you have questions.
If anyone has any specific question about the 107, this would be a good time, or anything David's covered would be a great time to put it in the chat. I think the main question I've seen so far was just around pricing. Yeah. And what we could do, if you don't mind, is as we move into this next section, if there's anything that David, you guys want to ask to David that as he moves forward, feel free to put it in the chat, and I'll try to stop you at a good stopping point.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right. So you've got that part, right? So that's how you become a official remote pilot certificate holder. And actually, you actually have to renew that every 2 years. So every 2 years, you have to take a recurrent exam, is what they call it. That one's only 40 questions, and it doesn't cover quite as many areas, but it still covers the main topics of airspace and regulation and all that. So it's kind of a refresher exam to make sure that you are keeping up to date with all the rules and regulations and everything. Well, now, real quick.
As I say, David, related to that, I think we do have some good questions on this. Yeah. Is if you have a Part 61 license, is the 107 just an endorsement?
Not an it's its own certificate, but if you are a Part 61 license, so if you're already a pilot, right, like private pilot, commercial pilot, flight instructor, any of that, you don't have to take the Part 107 exam. This is good. So if there are any pilots on here, but you have to be current. So it means you have to have your flight review. You have to be able to currently fly an airplane on all regulation stuff is taken care of there. All you do is you go onto the FAA's website. If you go to the FAA safety website, they have it's like a PowerPoint. It's kind of boring, but it's a course you sit through. It's like a PowerPoint, and then you take like a little test at the end. It's free just to kind of check the box that you did it. And once you do that, you can get your Part 107. Everybody calls it your Part 107 license. It's just kind of like the common vernacular, but it's your remote pilot certificate. You can get your remote pilot certificate. So that's you don't have to pay to take a test. It's online on your own. You can do it that way. So, because mainly what they want people to know is a lot of the airspace stuff. And if you're a pilot, you already know all of that. So they just, in that presentation and test, they fill in some of the gaps on the drone specific regulations and some of those things. So that's good. That's a good question.
A follow-up question, or not follow-up, but same topic, is if someone's already certified as a remote pilot, one, they ask, should I stay on this webinar? And based off having spoke with you before, the answer I know is yes, because of all the other topics you're going to cover.
Yeah, this is just check mark number 1 of the 5. Yeah.
Exactly. And number 2 is for the recurring exam, the piece you just mentioned, the 40 question. Is there any suggested material to study with preparing for that exam? And is that something also covered? I mean, I know you're going to touch on your course towards the end, but yeah, anything you want to add for that? Like your
biased.
Course offers that.
I'm obviously biased because we do have a course on that. But I mean, some people, they don't want to, like, our course is good for people who like structure and they don't want to go hunting around for stuff, right? It's just kind of, we just spoon feed it to you, and you just can go through it and pass. Those are just typically the people that want to pay for a course, right? They want, like, just give it to me exactly what I need to know so I can go take the test. I mean, there are other resources out there. I mean, you can Google stuff. There's some, the FAA has like a PDF you can download that's all like, it's mostly text-based. That's helpful if you want to read through it. I'm sure there's a bunch of YouTube videos out there, so you could piecemeal stuff, right? I would just focus a lot on the sectional charts and the regulation for the recurrent exam. So just go Google sectional chart questions for Part 107. You can find some stuff to brush up on if you want to take the free route. If you want to go the paid route, obviously we have a course. There's some other people out there who also have courses on it. So that's an option.
With practice tests, do you have practice tests for the renewal too?
Yep, we have a practice test. We have a practice test that simulates the main Part 107 exam, and then we have another practice test that simulates just the questions that you'll see on the recurrent exam. You can take it as many times as you want. Loads up 40 random questions from our test bank each time, so you can just kind of keep cycling through that. A lot of the questions we have in our test bank are straight from the FAA test too. We didn't do it by cheating, but we just know those questions so well at this point that they're basically the same.
One more before we move forward, because I know you want to move to the second piece, is if you have your pilot's license and you take the online piece to add that like addendum, are you under different rules than a hobbyist flying? Like, do different sets of rules apply? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you're already a pilot, like you're a certified pilot, like are the rules going to be different applicable to you regarding drones versus a hobbyist taking this piece?
Yeah. Hobbyists aren't allowed to operate for commercial use. Just like if you have your pilot's license, you're not allowed to have people pay you to get in the plane and fly them somewhere, right? You're still a pilot, but there are extra requirements for commercial pilots that they have to meet because they're going to be doing work for people. Same thing with drone pilots. So you have to be a certified have your remote pilot certificate, which, commercial drone pilot, if you will. So if you can't do any use of your drone other than fun or recreation use, right? So if you're flying a job for a realtor or you're flying for your own company, technically that would be an illegal use of that drone, and you could be fined if the FAA wanted to come after you and enforce it on you. Typically they'll do that when people are being like super egregious, right? But technically I believe you can face fines. I think it's like $1,100 for the drone pilot, and then $11,000, maybe $10,000 or $11,000 for the person that hires or causes the illegal operation. So if a realtor hires you and you're unlicensed drone operator, technically the realtor could be on the hook for like 10 or 11 grand in fines. Now, I mean, is the FAA running around like the Gestapo trying to get everybody? No, not really. But it's just like, do you want to take that chance liability? If you're doing it if you're trying to hold yourself as a professional, I mean, you would probably just want to get licensed anyways. It's just a test and $150, right? So yeah, hope that helps.
Thank you.
Sure. Are we good? Is that good for now, you think, on the testing, or is there kind of more questions?
Yeah, well, I'd say for timing purposes, why don't we keep moving? Sure. As folks have questions, we'll
Sounds good.
pull them back.
Sounds good. Okay, so which drones do you use when you're first starting out? Question we get a lot. I heard that some of you in here already have drones. Maybe some of you are already following Drone Launch Academy. I know we sent an email to our email list about this webinar. So if you're already on there, maybe you already have drones. But if you're not, or if you're new, I just want to walk through some drones that we recommend if you're first starting out. So if you are brand new and you've never flown a drone before, I always recommend a drone called the Syma X5C. And that is for two reasons. Number one, it's really cheap. It's like $35, I think, on Amazon. Syma, SYMA X5C. All right. It's really cheap. It's on Amazon. Go there. You can buy it like Amazon Prime. You'll get it. It's super lightweight too. This is reason number two. It's hard to hurt someone with it or hurt property. It's very lightweight. I've flown mine up super high. I've killed the power, and the thing just like floats down to the ground. It doesn't really get damaged. It doesn't hurt anyone. Now I did take the propeller guards off one time and flew it into myself. that kind of hurts, but like, you know, you can avoid doing that. But I would recommend getting that drone to practice just flying around, so you learn the basic operations, how not to crash, go out to a field, fly that around. Once you feel comfortable there, or let's say you're just like, let's skip the kiddie stuff, Dave, and like go straight for the good ones, you know, fine too. The next kind of super beginner, but one level up, I would recommend would be this guy right here, which is the Tello. It's by Rise, but they're powered by DJI. I'm not even sure what that means technically, but it works off of its own app. So you can fly it on your phone, which is pretty cool. Literally, your phone is like a controller, and you're like the touch screen. You can move it around. So this one's about $100, but actually it's pretty decent video quality, and it can do cool stuff. I think it can do flips. It can, you know, it's a fun drone. So that's $100. Not as long of a range, but that's kind of the next level I'd go. So if you're first starting out, I would do that. Then if you want to move into, you're not going to really get any jobs with this, right? This is more of a fun drone. This is not quality enough to go get work.
And for those first two, because I'm actually trying to drop links in the chat as you go. The first one is the Syma SYMA X5C.
Correct. Yep.
In the second one was the Rise.
Or just if you type in Tello, Tello, you can do DJI, or I believe it's Rise. It's I don't know if that actually says it on the box anymore here. Actually, you could just do DJI Tello because they're partnered with DJI.
Yep,
yeah. Okay. Cool.
Cool. I'm just dropping links. Folks are asking which ones.
Yeah. So that's like fun drones, just kind of like recreational learning to fly stuff. Then if you're going to go one level, if you're going to start like, hey, I want to get some jobs and I want a drone that's good enough to get like super kind of like base level jobs, I would recommend on the low end. So if you're like looking to spend no more than like $400, I would either get a used drone, like you can get a used like Phantom 3 Pro, or you can get a Mavic Mini. I think I have one in here somewhere, actually. I don't know where it is. Well, anyways, Mavic Mini. They just came out with the Mini 2, which is a really good drone. Those are about $400 to $500 range, right? So if I was going to go in the 400 range, I'd either get a used Phantom or Mavic Pro, depending how much those you can find those used for, or I would get a new DJI Mavic Mini or Mini 2 if you want to spend a little bit more money. So that's kind of the next level, and that will shoot 1080p, or actually will shoot, I think, 2.7K video, which is pretty good. It's better than 1080. It takes pretty high quality photos. They have gimbals on them, so they're stabilized cameras. So you can do some professional work with that. Kind of like you could do residential real estate jobs with those. You could do kind of basic level photo and video stuff with that, right? So that'd be kind of like my entry level. If you're going to crash it, it's not like the end of the world, but it's a nice enough drone. That's what I started off with. I went Syma X5C, and then I got a Phantom 3. I got a Phantom 3 standard, but that was like back in 2016. So then if you're like, okay, all right, Dave, I'm good with that. It's time to upgrade a little bit more. Kind of the next level I'd go to would probably be either this is the Mavic Air 2. This is a relatively new one. This will shoot in 4K. It's got a range of about 5 miles. I think the quality on this is really good. I've done $1,000 jobs with this. I've done bunch of different stuff. This is a really good drone. I really like it. This one is about, if you're just buying the drone itself, I believe is about $700 or $800. But I've really enjoyed it. They have things where you can call the Fly More combo, where basically they'll give you 2 extra batteries, a carrying case, and some extra stuff. So that if you're planning on using a lot or using it for jobs, that is helpful, because one battery gets you about 25 minutes of flight time, 25, 30 minutes. So if you're gonna be flying a lot, it's good to kind of have those extra batteries, or else you'll fly for 25 minutes and you have to sit there for like an hour or two while the battery charges back up. So not ideal. So that's where I'd go. And then if you want to go level up from that, if you're like, hey, I want to do like more serious jobs without getting into like the $10,000 range, the Mavic 2 Pro is really good, and the Phantom 4 Pro is pretty good. But I would say the Mavic 2 Pro is probably the most popular. It's got a 1-inch sensor for any like video people out there, but it's got it captures a lot more data. It shoots in 4K. It's just a nicer picture overall. Really, really large megapixel resolution for photography, better in low light, all that stuff. So that one is a more professional grade drone. Now you're not going to go shoot like Netflix movies with that necessarily, but any type of like professional video job outside of like movies, that will be good for. I know people who have professional video production companies, and they do all their stuff with that. So Mavic 2 Pro. So and those are about $1,600 or $1,700 at this point, I think. So that's kind of the tiers I would go. If I were you working on your drone progression, that's what I would do. Cool. Anybody, any questions on drones that I can answer?
Looking through the chat here.
Unless you're going to ask me questions about really specific specs that I've probably forgotten at this point. So.
We have some, but hopefully it's not too specific. This is brands other than DJI, such as Autotel, the Evo 1, the Evo 2 Pro. Do you have any thoughts on those? Have you used any of those?
Yeah, I've used some, and also one of our instructors, Alex Harris, he teaches our photography and videography, cinematography courses. He's stacked up a bunch of them together, specifically the Autel Evo, the one that's kind of the rival to the Mavic 2 Pro. It's a good drone, but I don't know personally anyone who's used that one and also used a Mavic 2 Pro and has liked the Autel better. I get comments that the picture's better with the Mavic 2 Pro. People just like it better. The only beef people sometimes have with DJI is that it's a Chinese company, right? So if they try to get, I don't know, some people are trying to go for government contracts and they are afraid that might hinder them. So I understand that. Or some people don't like the DJI has geofencing. So if you're really close to an airport, DJI won't let you take off unless you punch in some authorization codes that you get like from the like you have to send your FAA authorization to them, and then they send you a code that you can unlock it. So it's like prevents you from flying in areas you shouldn't be. I don't think Autel has some of those same lockdown restrictions. So some people like it better for that reason. But from a quality perspective, I haven't heard anybody who said they like it like that much better. So that's one thing. Another cool drone, and I think I might have talked about this on another workshop we've done together, is the Skydio. Those are cool drones. Really have a lot of like AI in them, so they're very autonomous. You can like drive your dirt bike through the woods, and it'll like dodge trees and fly around. So that's kind of a cool drone. I haven't personally flown that one, but I know people who have, and they said it's pretty neat. So that's something else you could check out. But I would say DJI is like 70 to 80% of the market share. So they're very user friendly. Most of the people I know fly them. I think they're good. I think the only complaints I've heard are the geofencing thing I mentioned and the fact that they're a Chinese company. So,
and then no, you're going to get into some of these other questions after, but I do want to I know specifically this one you have an opinion on. The original Mavic Pro, is that work worthy? Is that something you could do a level of commercial work with?
The Mavic Pro? Yeah, I think so. I mean, I had one for a long time. The only reason I stopped flying mine is I got like in my video, there was like a weird little like scratch looking type thing. It like the sensor got a little bit messed up. But quality wise, it was great. It was fine. It's nice because it's compatible with a lot of software too, like Drone Deploy and some of those. But it takes good photos. I mean, it's going to do just as well as like the Mavic Mini or Mini 2, I believe. So, and I did, work with that. So I think if that's what you have, fine. The best drone you have is the best drone for you is the one you have, so.
Any recommendations on racing drones? I saw a few questions coming around that too. And I know.
I got to be honest. I am not as an FPV guy necessarily. So FPV is first person view. There's like the racing drones. I would recommend checking out this guy, Martin Novak from Fly Life. We had him on our podcast, actually. I believe he's season 1, episode 10 on the Drone to 1K podcast. He talks a lot about that. And he's got his own podcast. He's got his own website. And all he does is FPV, and they geek out about that stuff. So if you want racing drones, FPV, I would check out his stuff. We're more focused on kind of the commercial use, the business side of it. So we stay focused on some of that stuff. Now, people are starting to use FPV drones for like action sports cinematography. So that's pretty cool. But it's not quite as prevalent. So.
But before you move forward, I think it might be helpful because you talk about seriousness and the tiers of drones. I know your group, you handle all sorts of different types of jobs. Could you maybe share a bit about, how the different tiers of drones align to perhaps different types of work? Like that, could you use a SEMA for real estate work? Or would you not recommend that? You kind of want to tier up, like.
No. So the Cyma X5C, it technically says it shoots in 720p. But you look at it and you're like, oh gosh, it's pretty bad. I mean, it's video where you can see what's going on, but it does not look like something someone would pay money for. You know what I mean? So I would say the minimum you would need to do like paid work, and this is like the minimum, would be like a Mavic Mini or the Mavic Air. You could find so this is the Mavic Air 2, the Mavic Air original. I did $1,000 commercial real estate job with that, and they loved it, and it takes good video. The only problem I had with that one is the range was not super good, and where I was flying had a lot of like radio towers and magnetic interference, so it would go like half a mile, and then I would have to like drive my car over there to like keep getting more distance. So that was kind of annoying because I was doing like this big warehouse. But yeah, but it worked. I mean, it did the job, and it would be much cheaper. So I would say not the Cyma X5C, not this, anything that you're going to pay like $350, $400 for and up will probably be your like baseline doing commercial work, right? So that would be like typically like real estate jobs, right? You're not necessarily like making a commercial for someone, but we did like we did a portfolio video for this commercial real estate company. You could do real estate photography. You could do so any real estate photos or kind of basic commercial photos type stuff, right? If you're wanting to get into, so I would say then there's like the next tier where I would put the Mavic 2 Pro and the kind of the Mavic Air 2. Some people complain about the Mavic Air 2. I think I can't tell a difference half the time between the Mavic Air 2 and the Mavic 2 Pro. If you're like a real like video professional into it, like editor, you can tell the difference. But I think the video quality is awesome. So I would kind of put those in another tier where if you want to be like serious about video production work, or if you want to do, if you're needing to do like inspection work, that's another thing. So inspection work requires typically very high resolution, large megapixel capability, so that you can take a picture and you can zoom in really far. So for instance, if you're doing a roof inspection, a lot of people use like a Phantom 4 Pro. It's got a big sensor, can take a very detailed image. So you can take a picture of certain parts of the roof, but when you zoom in, you keep the quality and it's not all pixelated. So if you need to look at damage in a certain area, you have that there. So, so if you're doing inspection work, it may be more important to get the higher resolution cameras. And then I guess one thing I didn't talk about, if you want to do like thermal jobs, so they use thermal cameras to inspect solar farms, to look for leaks in commercial roofs. Fire departments use them to look for hot spots in the fire or search and rescue. So there's some drones there. Thermal cameras get super expensive. So there's one drone that you can use that has a thermal camera that's kind of the most cost effective is the the Mavic Enterprise Dual. DJI makes it. Basically, it's a small thermal camera next to a regular camera. I think those are like in the $3,000 range, like $3,500. So those are used by law enforcement, fire departments, things like that. I've used one of those before. You kind of have to get a little bit closer. The distance for the thermal is not quite as good. But then if you want to start using really nice thermal cameras for like to see, like find people far away or to get very good resolution, you're going to have to get something called a Matrice, which is like a big drone that's a standalone, and you have like camera attachments that you put on it. So then you're going to have to get these like FLIR cameras that cost, like $5,000 or $7,000 on their own with the drone. You're talking like $10,000 to $20,000 setups for that kind of stuff. So those are usually like more like, commercial users, fire departments, like power plant, people who have big budgets. So.
Sounds like you grow into that. You definitely tier up into the 20K tier.
Yeah. So anyways, that's kind of like where I would say, but probably going to spend $350, $400 on at the bottom end. Yeah.
Great. And if anyone has any follow-up questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll try to come back to these towards the end.
Cool. Well, I'm going to keep moving on. So number 3, 2 essential skills that you need if you want to be successful with your drone business, right? So one of them is obvious. One of them may not be so obvious, right? So number 1 is kind of what we call tools of the trade. So I think people focus on this one a lot, but it's not, in my opinion, the most important for your success. So people think, man, to be a successful drone pilot, I have to be amazing at drone video, drone photography. I got to capture epic photos. It's just got to be like amazing quality. You know what I mean? Now, don't get me wrong. That definitely helps. Like the better you can make your stuff look, that's great. The more you know and the more you can do, fantastic. But what the majority of people want to do, right, which is just make some money with their drone, you really only need like a baseline skill level, right? Now, if you're terrible, which, if you're just starting out, you're going to be terrible, it will be hard to land jobs because people are going to see, well, how good are you? You know what I mean? But as long as you're like at an acceptable level, there's not a whole lot of difference in your earning potential between you being this good and you being this good. You know what I mean? You could be absolutely amazing, But if you're bad at number two, it's not going to matter. So number two is, you might have guessed, like marketing and business skills. This is where I think people discount the most, right? They just think, oh, if I'm really good, people are going to hire me, right? Or the even more naive people think, if I get my Part 107 license, I'm a licensed pilot, people are going to find me and hire me, right? And that's just not the case, because I mean, think about any other trade, right? If you're a real estate agent, just because you get your real estate license doesn't mean someone's going to come to you and be like, oh, list my house. Oh, hey, let me use you to buy. Like, they don't know you. They don't care about you, right? You have to build relationships. You know, people have to know what you do, right? So this is one of the biggest things, knowing how to actually do a business, how to find clients, how to speak with them, how to market yourself. That's one of the biggest things. So you kind of need those both together. You need to be good at what you do, or at least good enough. And then even more so is marketing, right? So that marketing is really going to determine how successful you are, right? I think I wrote down something like, like you can be the best carpenter in the world, right? But if no one knows who you are, what you do, or how you can help, you're not going to sell any cabinets. It's like you have to know how to do that stuff. So again, if you're interested in that, we got a whole podcast on hearing how people built drone businesses and different marketing things they do and their backstories. So that's very helpful. So, and at a very basic level, you need to learn how to use, I would recommend learning how to use Adobe Lightroom, the basics of kind of photography principles, drone photography principles. Again, we've got courses on that. There's other information out there. It depends on what structure you like. If you just want everything packaged for you and learn everything, or if you just want to kind of piecemeal, learn photography principles, learn video principles, how it works. If you're just like, I don't know what ISO is, I don't know what shutter speed is, you're not going to be able to get the most juice out of the nice tool that you bought. So learn how to use that stuff. But then once you know how to use that, it's essentially useless unless you know how to go out and get jobs, land clients, all that fun stuff. So those are the two kind of skills. And I could dive into each of those topics more, but I don't want to belabor the point too much, but I just want you to know, don't discount the marketing. And I can give you a quick marketing tip too. Again, if you listen to the podcast, you'll hear this all the time, but everybody starts with, hey, as you're getting better at what you do, as you're getting better at number one, build your portfolio, right? And do free work for people. So in order to build your portfolio, you can go out there and say, hey, can I do a free job for you? And you can use it for your client or whatever, and I can use it for my portfolio. And some people are even hesitant to hire you for free work. And people are like, oh, I can't get hired for free work. It's the end of the world. Nobody wants me. This is terrible, but it's still a risk, right? Because like, what if you really do stink, So practice on your own a little bit. We recommend going out and getting what we call community video. So you can go on like TripAdvisor and do like stuff to do in Tampa, Florida, right? And it'll pop up like top attractions in Tampa, Florida, Sunshine Skyway Bridge. Hey, guess what? That means people search for the Sunshine Skyway Bridge. Go out there with your drone, get some sweet shots of the Sunshine Skyway Bridge, throw that on YouTube, throw that on your website. As you get better, you can have stuff to show. So that way, when you go to a realtor, you can have something to show so they can see your quality. Or better yet, go to your friend who's maybe have a friend who has a cool house and say, hey, friend, let me do a video walkthrough tour of your house inside and outside, get some cool drone video, turn it into a sweet video. Do that. Then everybody knows a realtor. Call a realtor. Say, hey, friend, can you want to grab some coffee sometime? I want to tell you about something I'm doing. Also want to hear about how your business is going. You sit down with them. Don't talk the whole time because nobody likes someone who's a talker. Listen to them, asking how they're doing, how their business is going, all that stuff. Just tell them, hey, listen, I'm getting into drones. I've really been ramping up doing some drone video stuff. Listing videos are, there's some research that shows that people really love video and listing videos. More and more realtors are offering that to like attract clients and attract listings. If you want, on your next time you're talking to someone about a potential listing, offer them a listing video, and I'll do it for free. And if you think it helps, cool, you can hire me for more. If not, no worries. And you can show them the one you've done for your friend with the cool house and then see how it goes. We've had people who've done that and landed clients and landed jobs, and it grows from there. So quick marketing tip if you're kind of wanting something tangible, tactical. All right. Before I move on to industries, I guess we have any questions?
A few different ones that I think came up just from these past two sections. First off, folks are definitely saying in the chat, it sounds like without the marketing, without clients, obviously it's hard to build a business with drones. It's because it costs money. There's insurance to have. There's parts of having that. So repeating again what David just said, the marketing is critical, and obviously that's I think that tip you just gave is one of the most tangible, not just for launching a drone business, but any business. You need something to reference. Right. The second question that came in here was, do you need the 107 for even to put videos on YouTube? I would imagine not because of the hobbyist piece, but yeah, if you're just like starting off.
That's kind of a gray area. To put YouTube, no, because you could say I'm a hobbyist, put it on YouTube. Now, if you like have a YouTube channel with 1 million subscribers and you're monetizing that and getting ad revenue from it, then I would say they would argue that yes, you would need that. So
Yep.
a little bit of a gray area. If you're not monetizing your YouTube channel, I'd say no, probably not. But if you are monetizing it, or if it's clear that you're doing it for commercial purposes, then yeah, you would.
Great. Let me see here. Another question that came off here. I mean, a lot of these are still drone related questions. I don't know if you want to come back to that end. People have specific models they'd like you to answer. If you want to, do you want to wait to look for those towards the end just because there's so many different ones?
Sure. And again, if you have like really specific drone questions that like me or my team might like be better served to like look things up or give you some links or something like that, you can feel free to shoot questions to support@dronelaunchacademy.com. Just say, hey, I was on the workshop and I had a question about this drone, and shoot it to us. Either I'll answer it or the guy on my team, George, he also operates the drone business with me, the one we actually go out and fly jobs. Smart guy, you can answer those questions too. So if we don't get to him here, and it might be better that way, so you can get a more thorough answer and we can like send links.
That's support at your site, right? I'll put that.
Correct. Support at Drone. Yep.
No problem. I'll put that in the chat.
Cool. All right. So we've talked about this a little bit so far, but number 4, I was going to talk about like what are the best industries, right? So the most common industry people start off with is drones is real estate. You might have, if you've been around drones for any length of time, you might have already heard that. Real estate, it's kind of a love-hate relationship with real estate, right? So so the pros with real estate, I kind of said real estate / vacant land, because we've been actually doing a pretty decent amount of vacant land work. So people have lots of land that they want to advertise. Best way to advertise a lot of land looks super lame from the ground. If you just take a picture of just empty grass from the ground, people are like, what is this? But if you can get in the air, you take an aerial photo of it, you can draw the lines on it, you can mark things that are nearby, much more compelling for sales. So we do some vacant land. So the pros to that are volume, right? There's a lot of volume, right? So there's people buying and selling houses all the time, vacant lots, right? So there's work to be had, right? So there's volume and ease of entry, right? Again, you just have to be good enough. It's good, easy to practice on. You don't have to be like the world's best to do this stuff, right? So those are pros. Cons are ease of entry is kind of a con because now could be a lot of competition, right? So ease of entry, and then because of that, sometimes there are lower prices for that than other types of drone work that maybe require more skill or more expensive equipment, things like that. However, people love to complain about real estate. We've had several people on our podcast who make 6 figures a year only doing real estate. So it's definitely possible. People who like to complain typically email like 3 realtors, get turned down each time, and then they throw in the towel and they're like, well, this just isn't for me. You know what I mean? It takes time to develop that. And typically people will stay in the real estate game long enough to find some core brokers that they work with, and they just get like all of their business and they make a bunch of money doing that. But it takes time to kind of weed out the people who aren't good to work with, the people who aren't serious, things like that. So real estate is good. Again, when we're doing stuff, we run ads for our drone business. A lot of the leads that we get are for real estate work. We just did a job the other day. They say, hey, we got a golf course nearby and a lake nearby. Can you showcase that with those things there? I said, yeah, great. So there's definitely a demand for that, and people will ask for that. The next one I would say is, as you're doing that, real estate, what we've seen is can be like the bread and butter for a lot of people. That kind of like is their main source, pays the bills, but then they have other types of jobs that they do or other industries that they kind of add on that maybe the volume isn't as high, but it's nice, easy work for them. So one person we've had on the podcast, and he's in one of our courses, he's got a real estate video business, but then he also works for a roofing company, and he goes out and documents every new roof job that they do. So that way they have a catalog of all the jobs they've done, and they can say, oh, you want these types of shingles with this size house and this. They can show the prospective client, hey, here's what that would look like, So he's getting paid a pretty good amount of money to do that. Some of them will do, we say marketing videos for anybody that has a business that's outdoors, even indoors sometimes. But we've been contacted. We're actually bidding on a job right now to do a tennis resurfacing, like a little marketing video for somebody that does tennis court resurfacing. I don't know why that's hard to say. Someone else who wants to do get just kind of a map of their land for the USDA to propose some changes. What other ones we have? Oh yeah, golf courses. So anything that's outdoor that could benefit from some marketing. Pool companies, we've heard people in our courses, they go do marketing videos for pool companies, taking photos of that job progress to see what that's like. So anything outdoor that business that's primarily outdoors that could use marketing videos, you can use your drone for. So that's kind of another kind of add-on pieces and that people can do. And then I'd say there's another tier that's a little bit more high up, is kind of like I call like the high skill, which is like utilities, infrastructure, construction, engineering, where that requires a little bit more knowledge of those industries and typically some more expensive equipment. So you're doing mapping, or you're doing 3D modeling where you're overlaying building plans, things like that. So again, I just recorded a podcast with somebody. It's coming out probably in the spring, but they're making they made $300,000 in 2020 just doing engineering work with their drone. Now, they're extremely smart. They develop their own software and all this other stuff, right? So it's not just, oh, they got a drone and made 300K, but they're utilizing their drone as a tool. And they started with real estate and just kind of evolved into almost like an engineering consulting company that uses drones. So there's just a lot of different possibilities on that high end too, if you're really serious about learning some of that stuff. So those are the kind of industries I would talk about. Everybody typically starts with real estate and merges out into some marketing, and then kind of gets into some other areas as well. Cool. All right. Should I give my last little spiel here with the 5, what I would do, kind of my 5 steps if I were a new drone pilot or getting into this business?
I mean, one question before you hop into that is, I know you've spoken on it in the past, the aggregators. Particularly one of the questions that came in is, has anyone used Bark.com? And I know there's other one. I actually don't know Bark.com very well. Maybe you do. But there's other, aggregators for services. What are your thoughts on those? Because I know you didn't mention that and kind of where you would focus.
Yeah, those aren't bad. So some are better than others. I think ones like Bark, Thumbtack, those are decent because you control the client relationship going forward. Things like DroneBase aren't as good because they're kind of controlling that client relationship, and they're kind of doing most of the value add work, and they're paying you very little. But things like Bark and Thumbtack, I believe, are a little bit more where you're paying for credits to get leads, and then they just pass the lead off to you and you respond to them. So I think it's a perfectly acceptable way to find leads. I mean, I think it costs some money or they take a cut, but especially if you're just at the beginning and you're still looking for clients, I think that's a perfectly respectable route to explore.
Great. And cool. As David launches into his 5th and final section for today, if there's any questions you want him to cover at the end, this would be a great time to put those in the chat. If there's anything that that David's covered that you'd love to have some follow-up on, feel free to mention that in the chat as well, and we'll leave a little time at the end for those.
Cool. So here would be my plan. And again, it's a lot of what we talked about already, but just give you some action steps. If you're new to drones, step 1, go buy a Cyma X5C for $35. Go have some fun. It's a blast flying drones. If you've never flown a drone before, get that thing up, take some pictures, take some video, pop it in your computer, take a look at it. I remember the first time I popped that card in my computer, I'm like, whoa, I'm in an airplane. This looks sick. It's cool. It's really cool if you've never done it before. So go do that, have some fun, $35, can't go wrong. It's a good time. You're only going to get 5 to 7 minutes of flight time out of one of those batteries, but it's a great 5 minutes. Do that, right? So do that. Once you've gotten confident enough that you're not going to completely smash your drone and destroy it, then I would upgrade to something a little bit better. One of those maybe Mavic Minis, or buy a used Phantom, something like that, right? Get one of those and get experience flying a drone that has GPS in it, right? So the GPS drones fly a little bit differently than the Cyma. Cyma doesn't have GPS. It's just wherever you push the stick, the thing's going, So do that and get comfortable with that drone, with the app. There's a free app that you use to actually see what you're looking at on the drone. And then I would, if I was wanting to do it for business, step 3, right? Depending on how fast you're getting good at the other stuff, get your Part 107 license. So either go buy a course or get some self-study material. And you can we've had people study as little as one day. They'll sit down and go through the whole course on a Saturday, and they'll take the test the next day. That is pretty quick, in my opinion. Most people take about a week or so. But take a week, bite off, 30 minutes, 45 minutes a day, get through everything, and go take your test. Knock it out. Again, it sounds kind of like a lot, but if you just study for a week, it's not that bad, okay? So do that. Focus on the sectional charts. That's step 3. Step 4 is now you're going to work on your photo skills, your video skills. For $10, you can get Lightroom and Photoshop, $10 a month. It's a month from Adobe, and take pictures, put them in a Lightroom, mess around with editing, see how it impacts it. You can do really cool stuff in Lightroom, making the pictures look like night and day difference better. So practice with that. Practice getting smooth video. Try not to do what we call the herky jerky, right? Like yanking your drone all around. So it's like, you have like a nice shot, and all of a sudden the person operating the drone's like, whoa, like moves over here. It's like, whoa, it's not smooth. Try to get smooth shots, easy controls, try different angles. Everybody thinks you need to go like 400 feet and like fly around like a bird. Typically, those aren't the cool shots. Sometimes the cool shots are like low down to the ground, where you're flying over something, low and slow, or keep the drone up high, just look straight down and fly over some cool architectural objects, kind of experiment with that stuff. So get good, build your portfolio. And then finally, number 5, like we talked about, take some people out to lunch, to coffee, talk to them, just get to know people, start networking, show them what you've done, and just keep planting those seeds. Honestly, the people we know that have the best long-term success are just not afraid of going out and talking to people and networking. You don't have to be salesy or sleazy. Just go, hey, let me take you to coffee. I'd love to hear about what you're doing. And I'll tell you about what I got going on, what I'm working on. Most people say, sure, it sounds good. Buy them lunch and talk to them. And then, 2 months down the road, keep in touch. They might say, oh, this job popped up. Let me call David. So that happened. I knew a guy for a year, nothing. And then all of a sudden, oh, hey, you want this $1,300 job? Sure. So that's how that happens. So that's what I would do. Those are my kind of five steps I would do.
Incredible. Before we hop fully into the questions, because there is quite a few actually in the chat right now. David, it'd be great if you could just talk a bit about your bundle that you have for Black Friday. What's included in it? You actually have some of your students in the chat today, which is awesome. I love seeing that. Yeah, exactly. But if you don't mind, speak a bit about your bundle. I know that the special pricing of $5.99, that's only available to the 30th, November 30th. Yeah, just mention a bit about that, and we'll jump into the Q&A.
So we do this once a year, okay? On Black Friday, we save it for Black Friday. We actually never did Black Friday deals until last year, and a bunch of people liked it. So I said, cool, we'll do it this year again. So it's literally every Drone Launch Academy course that we have, minus the new one we just came out with, because we kind of have are working with that. We have stuff with Teachable going right in there. That's still available, but that one's full price at the moment, because we recently ran promotion on that one. But the 6 courses that you get every other Drone Launch Academy course, if you add it up, like the full prices of all of them, it's like $1,382 if you bought them all individually. Okay, so it's the Part 107 course and our flashcards. So that's going to help you pass that test we talked about. We have like a 99.6% pass rate for people that have if you successfully complete our course. That's our current pass rate. So that you get the flashcards with that too. We have an iPhone app and an Android app. You can use it on your iPad to do some flashcards to test that out. Right. Then we have, of course, Drones 101. It walks you through everything about a drone, what sensors are, what the flight controller does. It gives you some flight exercises using that Cyma X5C. We tell you how to do certain movements, things to practice to become a better drone pilot, right? So that course is normally $50. That's free. And then we get into some of the really higher level courses that are good. So we have Aerial Photo Pro. It's taught by Alex Harris. He's literally an award-winning drone photographer. So he teaches all about photography, real estate, landscapes, all different things. Teaches you how to do Lightroom, how to use the settings on your drone, how to frame things, everything you need to know. That course is normally $200. Then another one's very popular is Aerial Video A to Z. So that is super comprehensive course on everything video related with drones. So Alex also used to work in Hollywood. He worked for like Discovery Channel, did stuff for ESPN, all these different networks, doing editing and in the kind of video production world. And then he applied all that to drones, and now he has his drone business. And so he teaches you everything from the drone model to get, the computer you need to buy, how to get your footage, how to then take that into, he uses Adobe Premiere, how to do all your editing, how to just make really awesome demo reels. He also gives a few business tips that he's used in the past. So that's a really, really popular course. That was normally $400. And then finally, we have a roof inspection course, Aerial Roof Inspection Pro. That is taught by 2 folks out of California that do a lot of roof surveys for solar companies and roof inspections for roof inspection companies. So it teaches you how to survey a roof, how to use the software, how to create roof reports, how to work with solar companies, all that good stuff. That course is normally $500. So you get all 6 of those courses that are normally like $1,382. So I think it's something like 56% off if you buy them in a bundle together. So that's we're offering that, with Teachable until November 30th. So I think you have a link in there. But that's all of those together. If you're already on our email list, we're sending out some more info about details of all those courses. But that's kind of the courses in a nutshell there.
And we appreciate you making that offer with us, David. That obviously
Yeah.
it's an incredible thing. I love seeing your students in the chat today. As David said, that link should actually be above us, and as you're watching this webinar today, if you don't see it, don't worry. We're going to send it out with the replay after. But let's jump into these questions.
Cool.
We have a couple around pricing. You know, how do you approach pricing? Do you obviously you price by the job, but what do you think about when you're approaching specific jobs? Like, is it the hours?
Yeah.
Is it equipment? What can you share?
Yeah, it depends on the industry. So you got to think about your customer, right? So typically, if you're looking at a real estate agents are normally notoriously cheap, right? Everybody says they're cheap, but if they know you can do, they're concerned a lot with speed, right? So if they know you're going to get it done, you're going to get it to them pretty quickly, and it's going to be good enough. It kind of depends on what area of the country you're into. So I'll give you a couple of different examples. Jeremiah Oshwald, he is in Kentucky, in Lexington, Kentucky. He focuses on just getting a ton of clients in volume. So he's cheap. You can get an interior and exterior video with drone for $200. And he spends 30 minutes shooting, 30 minutes editing, and he's done. So he's making $200 an hour minus some travel time, right? Then you got somebody like Dominic Wilkerson, also on our podcast, also an instructor in one of our courses. He's in Seattle. He'll do interior photography, drone photography and video, like a whole video walkthrough tour. And he'll do this like Matterport, which is not drone related, but it's kind of like the 3D virtual tour stuff. He'll do that, but he charges $1,200, and he made he's killing it out there. He makes a lot of money doing that. So real estate wise, I would say for just photos, typically people are going to have to offer like ground photography as well, because a real estate agent doesn't want to go hire a ground photographer and then a drone photographer and then a video. You're going to have to kind of combo that. But if you're doing interior and exterior photos, we'll charge typically like $150 over where we are, kind of around Orlando. If we're doing like photos and video, we'll charge like $300 or so, $400 where we are. I want to get, for me, no less than $100 an hour for our work. And then if I can get more than that, great. So I know a lot of people. So Cody Retlick is another guy on our podcast. He says his target is always to make between $100 and $300 an hour. So he'll typically think through the job, say, how long is this going to take me to do? And he'll kind of give him a fixed price based on his mental math of between $100 and $300 an hour. So hope that's maybe a little bit helpful depending on what you're doing and where you are. And then,
thank you.
Yeah. And if you're doing more complicated stuff, right? Like if you're doing, mapping or construction work, obviously you can start to go in your mind on the higher end of that $200 to $300 range. And then think about your client too, right? Like, what's their budget like? If they're a one-man shop, they may not have the ability to pay that much. So, either you're not going to get them as either you want, hey, here's the price, and they're not willing to pay that, and so it's just not going to be a customer. Or some of these people like developers and people who own commercial real estate, they have a lot larger marketing budgets, and they're willing to pay more if you can still do the quality of work they want. So that $1,300 job was a commercial real estate. They owned a bunch of warehouses and things like that, and we just shot a bunch of different buildings. So it didn't take us a ton of time. It was a lot of buildings, but we did it all kind of in one swoop. So, we ended up coming out pretty good on that.
And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I think that's a very robust answer. Taking a different question is under skills, when you were talking earlier about the different skills needed for drones, you didn't necessarily dive into the flying skills, like circling objects, being able to do different pieces. Can you speak a little bit because I know you kind of mentioned tiering up as you grow in drones. I imagine part of tiering up is because you want to get practice in for those flying skills before destroying a more expensive unit.
Yeah.
Can you speak a bit about what are the essential skills? What should
I'll just talk about. So in Drones 101, that course we mentioned, we talk about there's some flight exercises you can do just to get good on the stick. So there's a difference between kind of like not crashing the drone and knowing how to fly it, and then some of the skills which are more like post-production, like using Lightroom and getting smooth video and knowing your camera settings. Those are a little bit more of I would call them like kind of technical professional skills. And then there's kind of just motor skills, right? So on the motor skills category, I would practice. We always tell people to start with just face your drone the same direction, fly just in a square, practice that. That's just your right thumb. And then practice going forward and turning the drone and going forward, turning the drone like this. That's using both thumbs, but like you're stopping, turning forward, stop, turn, And then you can try flying in a continuous circle, which requires a little more coordination. That's like flying straight with the right thumb and then tilting it to the left, but then also banking your other thumb a little bit, right? And then eventually you get into figure eights where you're kind of flying and banking in an 8 pattern. That's a lot more complicated. And then what they're talking about with the orbit is a really good practice. So you kind of pick a point like a flagpole or a fountain or something, and you try to fly in a circle around that, keeping that object in the center. And that uses both thumbs, and it can be kind of hard to do, but that's a really cool, good, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like cinematography style shot that people like to have, especially if you're like on top of a mountain. Use it a lot when you're like, real estate video, right? There's always one shot of the house that's kind of panning around it for a few seconds. So that one's good to know too. And it's not as easy. You think just like, oh, go right and then pull the camera the other way. Like once you start flying drones, you realize you have to kind of go like to the right and forward a little bit while you're pulling the camera to the left. So it just takes practice and tweaking, So I would say those are the motor skills part of it, but then there's like the technical part of it, which is learning how to use Lightroom, the settings that your camera should have to capture a certain thing, knowing how your shutter speed affects what the footage will look like, some of those items.
Thank you. The personal question, which I'm sure any business is dealing with right now, which is how has COVID impacted your business in particular?
Drone Launch Academy or flying drones?
That wasn't in the question. I would imagine in the
I'll just answer
drones.
both.
Why don't you?
They're both better, honestly. With COVID, people are less likely to want to go to open houses. They're less likely to want to get out and around stuff. They're less likely to travel. So we've heard people saying, hey, we were going to fly a team of engineers down here to go inspect this. We don't want to send them for travel reasons. We're going to hire a local company to go fly it with their drone, capture a bunch of footage, and just send us the footage. And the engineers back here will inspect it. We've heard that. Dominic Wilkerson's business in Seattle is booming because they're like, hey, listen, nobody can come to these houses. Now I want to do 3D virtual tours on every single house I have. We want to make sure we include video. So there's more demand for that. And then on our side, when people are at home a lot and they're just on their computers, they want something to do. And people who want something constructive to do will jump in courses. So we've had a lot of students sign up while they're just kind of quarantined and want something to do, want something to learn. So we've been fortunate to be able to help some more people learn about drones while they're at home, quarantined. So kind of both areas were kind of, I think some industries, obviously like the food industry and events and things like that, really took a big hit. But since drones actually help you do things remotely, right? Like, because you can capture a lot of, if let's say it's a cell tower, you can fly a cell tower. You don't have to send out engineers to climb it. You can send them the footage and they can look at it. Shopping centers, people have like, oh, we got like 7 locations. We want to like inspect each one, make sure their signage looks right, make sure the parking lot is not damaged, needs, cracks filled in, things like that. You can fly that with your drone, send it to their facilities team. They can inspect it, from afar. If it needs addressing, they can send someone out. So kind of COVID kind of forced some of those changes.
That totally makes sense. Teachable is the same piece, right? Like people are online digital learning. Like this COVID it's the great accelerant for so many different things, which
especially for remote anything. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Another question, right? You have so many folks here who perhaps starting their own drone practice. They want to know, what kind of insurance do you recommend for a commercial drone business?
Skywatch.ai. It's on-demand drone insurance. So you can get like $1 million liability policy for like 10 or 15 bucks an hour. So you're going to go fly a job, you can get $1 million liability policy. You pay 15 bucks, depending on where you are, 10, 15 bucks, and you're covered. They also offer insurance to like protect your actual like drone too. If this thing gets damaged, obviously that costs more. You got to get a policy for that. But for liability insurance, I found them to be the best and most user-friendly. And they teach in one of our courses too about drone insurance.
Oh, that's super cool. I actually didn't realize that.
I'm not like paid to say that or anything. I've used several different, another good one is Verifly. If you want to use someone else too, but I like Skywatch. I think they have really good customer support, very user-friendly software. Again, they're not paying me to say that. And there's a reason I asked them specifically to come teach, because I liked their company. So
great. We are kind of at time. I know we went a little over the hour. Before we sign off, any last things you'd want to add today, David? We have folks here who clearly we have some experienced pilots in the mix. We have some general folks. Any last parting words of wisdom you would like to give to the group today?
Sure. I would say, as we work with a lot of pilots, I'm working with more people who are starting drone businesses. We have some live office hours calls that we've been doing. I notice people get a little overwhelmed with everything. They think there's all this stuff to do. It's just kind of like, it seems like a lot, I really like the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller. And I was kind of reinforcing this in some people. Like pick just like one thing, like what's the one next thing you need to do to kind of get closer to where you want to be, and just only focus on that until it's done. Right. So people are saying, I need to get my Instagram set up and I need to get my website and this, my portfolio is not good enough. And I'm like, dude, whoa. Like pick one in the next week. What's one thing you're going to do? And do that first, because if you get paralyzed by so many different things to do, right? There's so many different options. So that's why I wanted to give you like a little 1, 2, 3. So you can say, hey, this week I'm going to buy a Syma X5C and I'm going to go fly it around in the field. And if you do that, this week is a win for your drone life, you know? So pick one thing at a time and don't get overwhelmed. Just knock those dominoes over one at a time.
Thank you so much, David. I'm going to sneak one more question in. I guess I missed one. My apologies. Is volunteering for, I guess a river study, and I don't have more context than that, would that require the 107? Because this seems like right in the gray line, like, because it's volunteer, but it is sort of commercial.
You're using it, I would say, not for fun and recreation. If they are getting you to do it for a commercial purpose, even though they're not paying you. So I would say you're probably not going to have anybody kicking your door in. But if you're looking at like letter of the law, you probably should have your Part 107 license. So maybe follow your heart. I don't know.
Err on the side of caution. $11,000 fine seems tough.
Yeah, I mean, just in a realistic sense, I doubt that you would get fined for that. But I don't know. If it were me, I would just go ahead and get the test. Unless you're like, I'm never going to do this again. This is a one-time thing ever. I can't officially condone it as somebody who owns a drone training company, but in reality, you're probably not going to get someone coming after you, but I know you never know.
Well, David, thank you so much. For everyone in the chat, let's give David a round of applause. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. As we said earlier, if anyone joined late and you're perhaps watching this after the fact, the replay is going to be available. We'll send this out after. The bundle that David mentioned, we'll send a link out to after as well. David, we really do appreciate you being a part of Discoverfest and a part of Teachable. Thank you again, everyone. We're going to sign off with that. Enjoy your afternoons.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.